Peace and greetings to the East, to all Freemasons everywhere throughout the universe. This is the channel, Illuminati Light, and I'm your host, Brother Majesty Montanez. This episode right here is simply questions and answers of the viewer, or well, questions of the viewers answered. So as you know, a lot of the viewers and subscribers leave questions on the channel. So instead of me just typing out the answers, I'm gonna have this series of episodes from now on where I'll just review the questions and answers of the viewers, or rather the questions of the viewers, and answer them on this particular segment of the channel. So let's get into this. I'll also encourage the viewers and subscribers to always ask questions and to also, communicate with other viewers and subscribers in the comment section, because it's an open forum. As you know, the policy of this channel is for any trolls who come into the comment section with nonsense, they get blocked from the channel. Plain and simple. Even though they make my channel more popular, but they just get blocked. This is not for that. So I'm gonna start off with, some questions that the viewers and subscribers have had over the past month, and I'll answer them here. And we'll do this weekly or monthly. We'll do it on a regular basis though. So the first question I have here is from Rodrigo Diaz. He says, "Great work as always. Thanks for the knowledge. I know there is a lot of bogus esotericism out there. In your opinion, is Manly P. Hall legit?" So I'll say that in regards to Brother Manly P. Hall. As many of the viewers know, Manly P. Hall was a brother Mason. He was into Rosicrucianism. He was into the occult in general. He started writing about sometime in the 1920s. He wrote a lot of books. And he was young when he started writing. He was in his early 20s. Let me not say when he started writing, but when he started to publish his writings, he was in his early 20s. And he started writing in the 1920s and then throughout the 1930s, which was the time of the Great Depression in America. So Brother Manly P. Hall wrote a lot of stuff. He has a great body of material out there. And in the beginning, I have to mention this because there's certain negative critics in regards to Brother Manly P. Hall. When Manly P. Hall started writing, or rather publishing, he wrote a lot about Freemasonry. And at that time, he wasn't a part of what you would call mainstream Freemasonry, but he was a Freemason. There are a lot of Masonic orders in the world outside of mainstream Freemasonry. Mainstream Freemasonry is not official Freemasonry, and nothing else is official. Even though you have individuals who try to give you that impression, but it's not true. So Brother Manly P. Hall, he was involved with Freemasonry from early on. He was just more affiliated with esoteric Masonic organizations, real mystery schools. So he wrote a lot. And to answer Rodrigo Diaz's question, Brother Manly P. Hall is definitely legit. Like, he's dead now. He died, a couple of decades ago or so, and or several decades ago. But he's definitely legit. If you read his book, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. It's a great book. He wrote the book when he was in his early 20s. And you're not going to grasp everything he says in that book until you start to progress spiritually. When I first read the book, it was a good book, but I wasn't as advanced in my understanding as I am now. So some of the most profound teachings in the book went over my head until I read it the second time. After I awakened, and then I could grasp what the brother was talking about. Great book. And he wrote it when he was in his early 20s. So the man had a lot of insight. The only thing to be mindful of with Brother Manly P. Hall is that when he wrote, he didn't write or lecture in the way that I write and lecture. When I write and lecture, I write and I lecture more from the perspective of giving you knowledge that I myself possess. I don't really like to mention a lot of hearsay or a lot of theories and things like that. I don't really like to touch upon that type of stuff. So with Brother Manly P. Hall, he always lectured and wrote in a way that was, in a way in which he would approach his subjects as a student, as opposed to being a teacher, which he was a teacher, but he just had that style about himself where he would approach the subject as if he's a student with you. So a lot of times he'll put subjects out there, you know, that may be a little far-fetched, and he himself may not subscribe to those things, but he'll just put them out there just to have an enlightening discourse upon the subject. So I'd say that with Brother Manly P. Hall, when you study his writings, with the Secret Teachings of All Ages, which is like his magnum opus simply because it's an encyclopedic book. I'm not a big fan of that book, and I'm really not a big fan of that book because Brother Manly P. Hall, for the most part, in that book is just giving you information. It's not like a lot of his other books, like The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, where he's really giving you his own insight and he's going into the subject through his own understanding. The Secret Teachings of All Ages is a book that's really, you know, just a collection of information. And it's decent, but I wouldn't consider it his magnum opus. A lot of people consider it that because it's a very big book. He put a lot of work into collecting the information, into promoting it, publishing it, and he was young when he did it. So, but yeah, I would recommend his writings overall. Just be mindful of his style. You know, like I said, he approached a lot of his subjects as a student would, who's asking questions or putting out there, you know, certain claims of others and so on and so forth. But he's definitely a legitimate brother, without question. That was a good brother. And like I said, his style is just different. He wasn't like myself or, let's say, Brother Albert Pike, who, as we all know, published Morals and Dogma. Brother Albert Pike was like myself. He would present information from the perspective of his own knowledge, what he knew. You know, so Manly P. Hall was not like that. He mostly approached the subject material as a student. But his stuff is very enlightening, so he's legit, you know, to answer the brother's question. I have another question here from Brother Raymond Owens Bay. He says, peace, brother. Can you touch on what the columns in the west and south represent as the lodge opens and closes? Thank you, good brother. And as for this question, this is talking about an aspect of Masonic ritual in the Masonic lodge, as most Freemasons would know, because not all Masonic lodges use exactly the same ritual. This is why when you study Freemasonry, you can't just pick up a book on Masonic ritual and think that every Masonic lodge works the exact same ritual. The rituals are very similar in every lodge is similar, but not exactly the same. And if you read the book and you start thinking you're an authority on Masonry because you read one ritual book, you're going to be led astray. So, in a lot of the Masonic lodges, the senior warden and the junior warden, who are pretty much the second in command and the third in command in the Masonic lodge, they'll have columns, many pillars on their desk or station that are used to inform the brothers of the lodge by visual, by visual reference as to when the lodge is working, meaning, doing ritual work or handling business, or when the lodge is not working, when the lodge is at refreshment, because there's always a break period in the lodge when we have meetings or when we have formal meetings. And all of that is symbolic. It's not done for no reason. So those two columns, to be more precise, when the lodge is working, you would see the column on the senior warden station raised up. It'll be upright. And the one on the junior warden's desk or station will be down. And in the reverse manner, when the lodge is at refreshment, when it's break time, you will see the column on the junior warden station standing upright and the one on the senior warden station down. So all of that has basically a practical purpose. And as we know, Masonically, those two columns represent Boaz and Jachin, or the two pillars of Solomon's temple in Masonic mythology and in the mythology of the Bible. So that really has a practical purpose that symbolically refers to the principle of polarity in Hermeticism. And as we know, the principle of polarity teaches us that the universe is composed of opposites, and that all opposites essentially maintain balance in nature. You have hot, you have cold, you have night, you have day, you have up, you have down, you have happiness, you have sadness, you have strength, you have weakness. Nature works like that to keep balance. So those two columns have symbolic reference towards that principle. Again, you have work and you have refreshment. So in my lodge in particular, we don't use that custom. We don't use it, and there are a lot of lodges in the world that don't use those two columns, but there are a whole lot that do. So that refers to that. Remember, Boaz and Jachin, those two pillars represent opposite forces in nature. When you're dealing with life, you're dealing with energy, you're dealing with forces, you're dealing with power. So you have the active pole of energy and you have the passive pole of energy. So, look into that concept in that context and you'll get more light. But I will tell you again that it really has a symbolic meaning, but it has a very practical purpose. You walk in the lodge, if you're coming in late or you're visiting and you'll see the column on the senior warden's station up and that of the junior wardens facing down, you already know that the lodge is at work. And if you saw the reverse, you would know, okay, the lodge is at refreshment. So that answers that question. If you have more, more that you would like to know about it, just let me know. And, just be more specific and I'll get more into it. Then we have a question by Isaiah M., right? One of our viewers/subscribers. He asked, is there a correlation between the military and Freemasonry as well as college frats and Freemasonry? Could you possibly make a video about it? I'll think about making a video about it because it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting subject, but I'll touch upon it now a little bit. As far as military, when you're dealing with Freemasonry, you're dealing with the study of building civilization. Masonry deals with mysticism, philosophy, etc., but a whole lot of Masonry is to equip you with being a builder, which esoterically means a God, a creator. That's your nature, as you see, like in the Holy Bible, which is a symbol of Masonry. In Psalms 82:6, it says, "Know you not that you are gods," right? In the secret doctrine of the Bible, it's certainly taught that you as man, you the viewer, or you as a woman, whether you're male or female, you are God incarnated. The creator becomes the creation. But most of humanity is asleep to that knowledge. This is why it says in the book of Genesis that Adam, when he was in the Garden of Eden, he fell into a deep sleep when woman was taken from his side. Man and woman are two halves of one whole. So you have two sides, the masculine and the feminine. When those two sides are halves, when they were divided just through natural creation, man's unity consciousness becomes lost. So we're born thinking that we're just creatures roaming about. But again, in the secret doctrine, it's taught that every human being, an animal, or anything that exists is the creator incarnated. But again, as the story, the Garden of Eden states, Adam, meaning man and woman, fell into a deep sleep. You know what I mean? And most of the masses are in a deep sleep. They're sleepwalkers. They're not awakened to who they are. But anyway, so with the subject of military, when you're dealing with civilizations, it is known that every civilization, whether that's a country, whether that's a federation of countries or whatever, you will have the science of military. And then you have texts, you have military philosophy, like the book, The Art of War. It's really a manual by Sun Tzu, which is a famous ancient book giving you insight on the art of war and military. Niccolo Machiavelli, who was an Italian philosopher, he also wrote a book called The Art of War, which deals with the principles of military. So in Masonic curriculum and real lodges that are mystery schools, yes, you'll have the study of military contained in the curriculum. And Masonry has a lot to do with it. And the rituals of Masonry, you're not going to see a whole lot of military symbolism in the 3 degrees, which are the official degrees of Masonry. You'll see certain reference to it, such as the step and the stance. Masonry is militant as far as the customs we do in the lodge. You have swords in the lodge. A lot of American lodges don't use swords. Really only the Tyler will use a sword in most American lodges, but you have a lot of reference to military discipline, even in the blue degrees. Like I said, the step and the stance. It's very militant, right? It's very disciplined, Freemasonry. But when you go into the Scotch Rite degrees, which is a system of side degrees or add-on degrees, you have a whole bunch of reference to military teachings. The whole Scottish Rite system is militant, but you have to go through all of those degrees and study it. So with the military in general, as far as, let's say, the United States military, a lot of the symbols of military are very esoteric. And that's because, again, in ancient times, all of the ancient governments were pretty much controlled by the priesthoods of the ancient religions, who were the custodians of the secret ancient mystery teachings. So they incorporated a lot of the symbolism of the ancient mysteries into military. So to this day, let's say with American military, you'll see that the eagle is an important symbol. The eagle is a bird which in North America will correspond to the hawk or the falcon in Eastern cultures like Egypt, because the eagle is from the same line as far as, lineage of that particular bird with the hawk or the falcon. A falcon is just a domesticated hawk. It's a hawk that's trained. But anyway, when you see a hawk or you see a falcon, the hawk and the falcon, they have sharp vision amongst the birds. They're hunter birds. Their vision is sharp. And that vision represents the type of vision that a mystic, the type of vision that a mystic has in the mystery. Your third eye is sharp, it's keen. And the same thing applies to the eagle. The eagle has sharp vision. These are birds who, they're hunters by nature. So their vision is very sharp. They can be high in the sky and they can see prey and zoom in on that prey. Their vision is very keen. So those birds represent the self, your true self. So that's an example. Also, you'll see in the military, you'll have stripes. And even in semi-military bodies, like with the police, security, whatever, you'll see stripes where the stripe will represent an upright triangle without the base. The triangle will be like this, it'll be upright as opposed to inverted. So when you're dealing with the upright triangle, you're dealing with the masculine aspect of nature. If you're dealing with an inverted triangle, which is an upright triangle in reverse, you're dealing with the feminine, because the inverted triangle represents receptivity, to receive, to be passive. That's characteristic of the female gender. Females receive, even when you're dealing with their sexual organs. A vagina receives. A penis gives, it penetrates. So when you're dealing with masculine and feminine energy, the masculine energy is always active. You know, it's active, it's outgoing. The feminine energy is receptive, passive. So with those military stripes, you'll always see the triangle without the base though. So it's not really a triangle, but it's a part of a triangle, right? You'll see that those stripes are an allusion to the upright triangle, because the military profession is very masculine. It's rare that you're gonna see female soldiers. If you do see a female in the military, a lot of times, you know, she's gonna be doing those things that are characteristic of the feminine gender, which is taking care of people, nursing people, doing office work. It's rare that you see a female soldier that's in the field. And that has nothing to do with gender bias. It's just very practical. You know, the male gender is the stronger of the two genders. When it comes to physical combat, it's very rare that you'll come across a female that can match the physical strength and combativeness of a man. A woman will not stand a chance 9 out of 10 times when it comes to physical combat with a man, especially if she has no weapons. So the military profession is very masculine. It deals with that Mars energy, physical, masculine dominance, because it's warfare, it's bloodshed. So those are some examples, but yes, there's a lot in the study of military that will correspond to the principles of the ancient mysteries and the symbolism of the ancient mysteries in general. As for the question of college frats, Freemasonry is not directly linked to college fraternities. You have had certain college fraternities that were founded by Freemasons. As an example, you can take the Order of the Skull and Bones, which is a fraternity in Yale University. So that fraternity was founded by a couple of Freemasons. So, you know, they incorporated certain Masonic symbolism into that college fraternity, and that college fraternity has a purpose for its existence. It's just a network. It's a network, and it does have certain mystic symbols. You know, but do they really focus so much on the mystic symbolism, and do they really teach as a mystery school would teach? No, but it does have the influence of Freemasonry on it, simply because it was founded by Freemasons. But other than that, college frats are just basically sophisticated gangs for for college campuses, you know, so that individuals who go to school together, they can look out for each other. If one person gets a good job or gets into a high sector of society, he'll meet a person who was in his college frat, you know, and help him out, look out for him, get him a job, so on and so forth. And you'll see that with the Skull and Bones, like years ago when you had George W. Bush, the son, not the father. He was running against John Kerry, and John Kerry was a Mason, but John Kerry was also a Bonesman, meaning he was a member of the Skull and Bones, and so was George W. Bush. So they were both Bonesmen, part of the same fraternity. It's just that John Kerry was also a Mason. George W. Bush wasn't a Mason, but you know, they ran against each other. George W. Bush's father, he was a Bonesman, and he was a member of the CIA. The father, George Bush. You have Bonesmen heavily involved in the CIA. They look out for each other. That's a strong college fraternity. So, but as far as Masonry per se, you know, having a direct connection with the college frats, no, we're something different. We're a mystery school. And I have a question here from Candace Cantu. She says, are you familiar with the book of the Law of the One? If you are, I'm interested in your opinion on the subject, considering your indicated knowledge on the subject. Further, I am curious, do you consider yourself to be an individual endeavoring to be of service to the self or service to others? Thank you. And to answer her question, or the first part of her question, I am familiar with the book of the Law of One, which is by an individual who wrote under the pseudonym of Ra. The book deals with a lot of stuff, but it also deals with the concept of communication with extraterrestrial beings and that sort of a thing. So it's not one of those books that I'm too fond of. I think it's interesting, you know, because the universe is infinite, it's vast. You know, if you have any sense, you will have to entertain the possibility of there being extraterrestrial beings. You know, now you have galaxies that are very, very far from our galaxy. Far, meaning you wouldn't even be able to travel to these galaxies physically in a single lifetime. So I think that the material in that book is interesting. I think it's worthy of you know, your speculation upon the subject. It's similar to the book or the book series, The Earth Chronicles. It's a great book dealing with, you know, the concept that perhaps the Anunnaki, which were the gods of the ancient Sumerians, were actually extraterrestrials, and they came down here and they founded humanity, you know, through genetic experimentation, etc., etc. All of those things are cool as far as speculation. And I'm open to the possibility of those things, frankly. However, those are not subjects that I would spend too much of my time studying, because as a Mason, we're more focused on practical knowledge. Not just practical knowledge, but useful knowledge. So you want to study those things that are useful. Then you'll have those things that you can study in your idle time. You know what I mean? And unless you reach the status of being wealthy, or you come from a wealthy family where all you really have to do is dedicate your time to study, you can study a whole lot of those things. But for the common man, you have to make money. You have to earn. You know what I mean? So the things that you do study have to be very useful and very practical, you know, so that you can maximize your time to have the ability to study those, those more, I don't want to say useless, but I'll say less useless forms of knowledge. So it's like, okay, the extraterrestrial thing's real cool, but okay, if they're there, they're there. You know what I mean? If not, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But today, I have things I have to do in this civilization. I have to build my civilization. You know what I mean? So, so that answers that part of the question. For the second part of her question, she asked, do you consider yourself to be an individual endeavoring to be of service to the self or service to others? And I'll say that in the mysteries, we're taught about balance. It's an essential principle of the mysteries. And, when we meditate and we engage in our studies, we come to the realization within ourselves, not just from a book, but within ourselves, that balance is important. Masonry teaches balance all throughout the degrees. From the symbolism of the 3 lesser lights of the lodge, to the symbolism of the square and the compass, to the symbolism of the level, the square and the plumb, so on and so forth. From the 47th problem of Euclid, the Pythagorean theorem, which those 2 symbols are the same actually, but they represent balance. So, as for me, myself, as with all Masons on the path, it's a 50-50 thing. I serve myself and I serve others. If I go to one extreme, I'm off. If I try to go serve everybody, then I neglect my duty, right, in the grand scheme of nature, to make sure I have that self-balance where I'm taking care of myself, and vice versa. So I'm here to serve others, yes, but I'm also here to serve myself. I'm not here to just serve others and not serve myself, or I'm not here to just serve myself and not serve others. And you'll see that with the channel. You could read the comments if you actually read other people's comments and see how people will say, wow, yeah, this channel does a lot for me. I benefit from this channel. It's made me a better person. It's made me more enlightened. I'm doing big things now. I'm working towards doing big things. So yeah, this channel is a sure example of the fact that service to others is important. But self-service is also important. You want to have balance. And it's like that with the mystery schools. All of the students of mystery schools have to understand that you have to contribute to the school also. It does cost money to maintain the school. It costs money to maintain communication. It costs money to make moves. And money doesn't always have to be in the form of currency. That which we call money, paper, is a symbol of energy. So if you have the ability to do something, energy, in other words, you do it. That's how you can contribute. You can share the teachings. You can, offer up some of your skill sets and things of that nature. So that's something all students have to understand. Because, you have some people who have that concept where they feel, people should teach for free. Why? You think a librarian should be doing librarian work for free? How's that woman or man going to pay their bills? Right? So if you value it in society, it's worth money. And that's how I feel about Masonry, and that's how all real Masons feel about Masonry. All Rosicrucians feel like that about the organizations. That's how we're able to afford to pay rent when we have meetings, or to be able to distribute books, and so on and so forth. So serve yourself, but serve others. Don't get caught up in any extreme. So that answers that question. The same sister asked, what is your opinion on the divine adjutant as put forth and written about by Albert Pike in regards to the Hermetic school of thought? I'm also interested in your thoughts on Sabbati's Zevi or Ziva circa 1600s, would you say that the Sabbatian influence upon Freemasonry was significant or not? How about the Frankist movement? Thanks, I'm enjoying your channel. As far as the divine adjutant as put forth and written about by Brother Albert Pike in regards to the Hermetic school of thought, it's very clear amongst all the ancient mystery schools. The universe is half male and half female. It's a law of nature, it's a fact. You don't even have to get that deep to see it. Study animal life, you're going to see male and female. Study plant life, you're going to see male and female. And sometimes you're going to see true androgynism, which is when the organism is both male and female at once and self reproduces. You study sea life, which is part of the animal kingdom. You see male and female. So the universe is both male and female. It's about balance. Now, when people start thinking that that balance means that the male is just like the female or the female is just like the male, they start getting lost. That's not what it means. The male and the female are two halves of one whole. They coexist by virtue of each other. So when you take the feminine principle embodies passivity, generally speaking. The male embodies that of activity, dominance. The feminine is more weak, it's more soft. The masculine is more hard, it's more strong. But those two balance each other out. So when you have an imbalanced female, she'll want to be what the male is. You know what I mean? Like, oh, a male being dominant, that's wrong. No, that's the nature of the male. And likewise, the nature of the female. Or not likewise, on the contrary, the nature of the female is to be strong. To be weak, to be passive. That's how it works. And the same thing with logic and emotion. Women are more nurturers for a reason. That's what they do best in relation to the masculine. You know, that's what they do best. So they nurture, they're more in tune with their emotions. You know, that's the way it is. So the whole object is for those two opposite poles to find the pros and the cons of each aspect of manifestation and to have them work together harmoniously. So in the mysteries, it's like with Freemasonry in particular, the riddle of an entered apprentice mason in the first degree is what is better, light or darkness. And those who have not attained to enlightenment don't find the answer to the riddle. They'll say either light is better or they'll say either darkness is better. And they'll give all of the, let's say they think darkness is better. They'll give all the pros as to why darkness is better than light. And even if they're right in what they're saying, they're only right relatively speaking, not absolutely speaking. And the same thing for light. Light has its pros and it has its cons, but light and darkness must coexist. You know, one is not better than the other intrinsically, only relatively. So, you know, when we understand the law of balance, we'll understand the principle of nature being androgynous, etc. So that'll answer that question. For the sister, as for Sabati Ziva or Zevi, who lived around the 1600s, I've never heard of the individual, but I'll look into the person. So I wouldn't know if the Sabbatian influence upon Freemasonry was significant or not. I wouldn't know about that. What I can tell you is that most of the free-thinking movements of the 1600s were very influential upon Freemasonry. Anything, as Brother Albert Pike says in Morals and Dogma, he talks about the anti-Christian priesthood thinkers, meaning those free thinkers of the 1600s and the 1700s, which is known as the Enlightenment period of Europe, when free thinkers were sparking revolutions to overthrow the papacy, to take the Pope out of power, so that science and enlightenment principles could flourish, to bring about a better kind of humanity. Any of those movements, and there were many of them, were influential upon Freemasonry. There's just so many that existed. Some were small movements, some were big movements. So, you know, if that particular movement was like that, I would say certainly that it had an influence upon Masonry. It's just that in the 2000s, we become so complacent with, you know, taking our rights in society for granted. You have people who can't fathom, you know, people who are born in this century that can't fathom that. In the 1600s and the 1500s, especially in the 1500s and the rest of the Dark Ages, that you didn't even have the right, really, to read what you wanted to read or to say what you wanted to say. So they take this stuff for granted. They just think like, oh, Masonry always existed in the way that it is now. Nah, you know? There was a necessity for Freemasons to keep their teachings secret during the Dark Ages and during the Enlightenment period, because you would be arrested or you'd be killed for going against what the church was teaching. You know, and today, as we learn, you know, when we study the Scottish Rite degrees of Masonry, which are an essential, but they're just add-on, you know, supplementary degrees, you know, we learn a lot about the mentality of the blind mob, and we'll see that today in America. Even though, you know, we have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to worship how you want to worship, as long as it doesn't conflict with the laws of the government, the secular laws. You see people living in America who think that they can persecute you because you have your own opinion. You see it all the time. We call them, over here in New York, we call them the liberal Democrats. It's not all Democrats, but it's the liberal ones. You see, like when Donald Trump got elected to the presidency, they were in all throughout New York City throwing cocktails, meaning cocktail bombs, attacking Republicans. They were upset because Donald Trump got elected to the presidency. You understand? And that's crazy. That's not cool. But that's the blind mob that we learn about in the Scottish Rite degrees, you know? Or not that we learn about it there, but there a lot of the degree teaching you deal with that. So, you know, you're always going to have that, you know, people who take their freedoms for granted, or they try to persecute others because of their opinion, instead of having tolerance. And instead of knowing that this person is entitled to their opinion, you can still coexist with them. But you should never want to persecute somebody because they think other than how you think. That's savage, you know? So Masonry is 100% against that. So yeah, I'll move on to the next question. Truth seeker seeking truth. He says, thank you, brother, for sharing your insight. I'm so thankful for you, man. You were the push that made me pull the trigger to become a Mason. And of course, he's speaking figuratively there. You made it intriguing and deep. The only information I received about the cable tow in my lodge was that if I didn't say I put my faith in God at the altar, I would have been pulled out by it, shaking my head. And I did an episode recently, a 2-part episode, on the symbolic meaning of the cable tow in Freemasonry. So if you haven't seen it, you can go back and check it out. So the brother's referring to that episode, or that 2-part episode. Then there's a viewer who goes by the name Gold and Apple. So he says, or she says, I'm not sure if the viewer is male or female, I really don't know. But Golden Apple says, if the Kabbalah is the yoga of the West, then I'm on the right track. Yeah, you are on the right track. I wouldn't say that the Kabbalah is the yoga of the West per se, because yoga is widespread in the West, in America. Of course, you know, you have a lot of people who have capitalized off of yoga in the West. They have yoga centers that do not deal with traditional yoga. Traditional yoga is Hindu mysticism. It's the ancient mystery school of the Hindus. And it involves meditation. It involves a lot of devotion. It involves a lot of contemplation. A lot of the yoga you're going to come across that you see in the Western Hemisphere today is just mostly a bunch of Caucasians setting up yoga centers and just doing half the yoga, which is the poses, and charging people to do yoga exercises. It's fake yoga. I'm gonna keep it blunt with you. I know because I'm in New York City, so I've been around it. But then you have true, yogic temples out here in the West that were established by, yogis who came from India, came over here teaching the principles of yoga. And if you go there, you're going to obtain enlightenment. It's deep, it's good. So as Golden Apple says, Kabbalah is, every mystery school is like yoga. It's just a different tradition. Yoga just deals with ancient Indian religion as far as its symbolism. It's the non-dogmatic aspect of the religion. You have to separate the two. You have the public religion, as Brother Albert Pike says in Morals and Dogma, and then you have the private religion, which would be the mystery school. That's where you think for yourself and you start learning about scientific principles and different practices and exercises such as meditation. Also the art of memory, building memory palaces in your mind and things. There's a bunch of stuff. But so yeah, Kabbalah is deep. But in the same way that you have a lot of fake yoga in the West, you have a lot of fake Kabbalah in the West too. Make no mistake about it. Golden Apple then asked me, are you familiar with Roberto Calvi of the P2? And I would say yes, I'm familiar with the history of the P2 Lodge, which was a European lodge, and it's, renowned for having, allegedly become corrupt, having mafia members in it, and doing a lot of underhanded business. And I really wouldn't speak on it because I've never met any brothers from that lodge. I've never visited that lodge. I only know of what I read about the lodge. And a lot of people are enemies of Masonry. So you may have a member of a Masonic lodge who's involved in something that's considered sinister, and people will try to use that as an example of Masonry being sinister. So I don't really indulge too much in the study of the conspiracy stuff, or conspiracy theories, rather. I just do know that when you're dealing with Masonry, you're dealing with a vast number of different individuals. You may have a member of your lodge who is politically a communist. You may be a capitalist. One member of the lodge may be involved in some sort of business that you consider to be unethical by your ethical standards, but by other ethical standards, that business may be considered ethical. So in Masonry, we're very harmonious. We don't beef with each other inside of the lodge because this brother's involved in something I may not agree with. You know what I mean? There's a big difference between being an actual menace to society and simply being a person who subscribes to a philosophy or a business structure that you don't agree with. So again, Masonry is not dogmatic. We don't operate like that. We don't. No matter if you may disagree, you don't. It's like you may have a brother, let's say he has a brothel established in Las Vegas. It's legal out there. You may not agree with that business yourself, but what he's doing is legal. And he may be a deep person otherwise. So you can't interfere with what he's doing. You can't. It's not your business. What he's doing is legal, and in the place in which he's doing it. And he's a Mason, and that's the business he indulges in. It's the same thing with the ancient temples of Greece. And you would see it in other ancient nations where the priesthoods would run brothels. That was a legal thing. It was a legal thing. That's what they did. They had brothels in which people would come in as customers, and all of this was run by the priesthood. You can look it up in an in an encyclopedia. Look it up in Wikipedia. So a lot of that stuff, it is what it is, man. You know what I mean? Especially when you're dealing with politics. It's a whole other ball game that stands where it stands. You know what I mean? And there's Masons from all different walks of life. So I'll leave that where it's at. Golden Apple says, also, he says, you gave me a whole new understanding of the cable tow in regards to the Entered Apprentice degree. Thanks. You're welcome, brother. That's what I do on this channel. I'll give you real Masonic insight, not the cookie cutter social club type masonry. You have to be able to distinguish between those two, which is something that Brother Manly P. Hall spoke about also in his time. So did Brother Albert Pike, so did Brother J.D. Buck, many renowned Masons. There's a social club type of masonry, which was created by the original Freemasons for a reason. They were really the torch bearers. Their whole object was to continue our rituals. But without them understanding what Masonry really taught. And they served their purpose, even though they still exist, these social club lodges, but their time is done. We don't need them anymore. We just don't. But there's a reason that that type of masonry exists. So, you know, when you get information from those kind of Masonic organizations, it's going to be watered down. It's going to lead you nowhere, really. Golden Apple also mentions how the enlightened is what the Illuminati means, and it means those who have insight. Of course, that's why this channel is called Illuminati. Like, Illuminati is not one organization. It's just a general term that refers to the whole body universally of students and teachers of the ancient mystery schools, the enlightened. We shine light. You know, we take individuals out of spiritual darkness and into the light. That's what the Illuminati means. It's not one organization or anything like that. It's just a general term.